All right. It is time for us to begin. One of the interesting things about this one is we have in verse one kind of a new introduction. This talks about how these are proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah they copied. So it's kind of telling us that these were preserved through the 250 years after Solomon and um, during his reforms. These were compiled and unlike some of the other chapters that we've run through where you have kind of longer developed themes, in this one it seems like we're in that kind of shorter sayings, but we'll have a couple of verses that tie together. And so I tried to look through this and find a way to compile this where we could look at a little bit longer sections, so we have kind of some broader themes, but I think that'll help us kind of just tackle all of this in a reasonable amount of time. Um, so I want to start off with 1 through 7. And let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Breaking it up like this makes it difficult verse wise. Wilson, could I get you to read 1 through 4? And then Mr. Ronnie, could you get 5 through 7?
Yeah, I want to do that. Chapter 25, verse 1 through 4. These are proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search out a matter. As the heavens for hate and the earth for death, so the hearts of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from silver, and it will go to the silversmith for jewelry.
Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Do not exalt yourself in the presence of the king, and do not stand in the place of the great. For it is better that he say to you, come up here, than that you should be put lower in the presence of the prince, whom your eyes have seen.
Right. So I kind of see this section kind of pointing toward like wisdom. It recognizes proper authority, and it kind of knows its place. Does anything in 2 through 5 really? So let me back up. Two and 3. Is anything in 2 and 3? Does anybody have anything they see in that they want to bring out that maybe wasn't so obvious to you before? The reason I say that is I had always looked at this from one perspective, and through this study, I have come to realize that I was viewing it wrong. I was always kind of looking at this from the perspective of, okay, there's things in here in Scripture that are kind of nuggets that God has concealed in this that we search for and we find. Where I don't necessarily think that's the point of it now. For me, it seems more that God is not necessarily hiding truth from us, rather that His greatness truly exceeds our understanding. Does anybody see that, or am I off on that? Or
Yeah, I can see the struggle with. I'm assuming you're referring primarily to verse 2, that idea of the glory of God to conceal a matter. Um, I might think more on what you were saying that may make sense. I've thought about it in terms of the opposite of what has been said so often in the Proverbs about a talebearer, a whisperer, a gossip, one who's wanting to spread all the news they can. Uh, we sometimes think about keeping secrets as a negative thing, but there are some things that don't need to be shared with everybody. And so I've thought about it in those terms of concealing rather than spreading, not the gospel, but information that doesn't need to be shared with everybody.
I got you.
I'm not saying that what your thought was wrong. I'm just giving you the way that I have viewed it.
That's why this is good, right? It kind of helps us look at things from different perspectives. Because sometimes it's easy to get rutted into a place and just that's the way you view it. You know, it's good to have other views on it. What about 4 and 5? Anything jump out at anybody from 4 and 5?
Yeah, you've got precious metal that has impurities in it, and if you want it to be valuable for jewelry for something useful, you've got to get the dross out. And the same line of thinking in verse 5, you've got to get the wickedness from the kingdom, if you want the throne to be established. So if it's to fulfill its full potential and value, you've got to remove the impurities.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that is applicable for us. Like we need to search in ourselves and remove the things that maybe we're holding on to that we shouldn't be. That way we can reach our full potential, on this side. What about, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wonder if James may have been reading this section of Proverbs before he wrote his book, because there are several things that coincide with some of what James wrote about.
Yeah, absolutely. What about 6 through 7? And kind of looking at 6 through 7, why is self-promotion such a dangerous thing, both spiritually and socially?
Say that. Could you pose that question again one more time? I lost you.
Yeah, I'd say, why is self-promotion such a danger, both spiritually and socially? Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, one danger to me is, I think, what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 4 and verse 6, that when we are prideful and arrogant, it is not just in relationship to other people. It becomes, we become arrogant in respect to God's word. And there's a real danger is this aspect of promoting self. And then we put our wisdom above that of God's will. And there's a lot of danger in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it reminds me of, Luke 14, where Jesus said, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, kind of that idea. And then Brad mentioned James a minute ago, being humble yourself in the sight of the Lord there in James 4 and verse 10. It kind of, this idea of self-promotion is never a positive thing. I think there's some nuance there with being confident in yourself and doing that. You can do a good job, because you need to have that, but that's different than promoting yourself in a way to be exalted above others. All right, well, has anybody got any more thoughts or comments on this section before we move on to 8 through 15?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
The idea of self-exaltation is only limited until you understand that there will always be people who are better than you. Because when you go and think that you know everything, you find that there are people who knows many other things different from what you know. So it is better to humble ourselves. And even if there will be praise, let it come from others who see you and know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's important to try to surround yourself with people that you obviously know are smarter than you and have more ability than you to keep yourself in check. And that's been really easy for me to do. So I can definitely say it helps. Yeah. All right, 8 through 15. If we can get Jesse, can you read 8 through 11, and Ian, can you finish off through 15?
All right.
Do not go to court for what you do in the end, when your neighbor has put you to shame. Debate your case with your neighbor and do not disclose the secret to another, lest he who hears it expose your shame and your reputation be ruined. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver.
Like an earring of gold, an ornament of fine gold is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear. Like the cold of snow in time of harvest is a faithful messenger to those who send him, for he refreshes the soul of his masters. Whoever falsely boasts of giving is like clouds and wind without rain. By long forbearance a ruler is persuaded, and a gentle tongue breaks a bone.
So in verses 8 through 10, I mean, we kind of have, some teaching on this general idea in the New Testament. But I think this speaks more to what would happen before you are ready to go to court, right? This idea of don't rush into it. Don't rush into conflict. Don't rush into accusations that you may bring something upon somebody prematurely and be wrong and then ruin your reputation in that. And I think this follows so much of what we've seen in the Proverbs about how we should speak and how we should really be careful about what we say. And I think this is, again, to Brad's point a minute ago, James, be swift to hear and slow to speak. There's a lot of wisdom in this of gathering the information first. Anybody have any thoughts on that, on 8 through 10?
Just two words come to my mind. They're I guess antonyms to what you're saying. They're impetuous, and lack of discretion. I know that all too well. I know what it's like to be hasty and to be impetuous and to jump to something. And I also know what it's like to exercise a lack of discretion. So I know what that looks like. And since I know what that looks like, I should avoid that. I should seek to be more thoughtful and reflective of what the outcome may be, and I should use discretion in how I speak of things with other people. That's a part of growing in wisdom. That's something I'm continuing to grow in and hadn't quite all figured out yet, but this text speaks to that we can all grow in that.
I think your comment ties perfectly into 11 and 12, where, words spoken correctly, they have a lot of value, right? But a word fitly spoken, as my New King James mentions it, it basically compares those to fantastic things. And how someone who is rebuked, who is seeking after truth, and they realize that they're wrong, and they respond in a positive manner. I mean, that is something that we all would want to be the person on the other end who receives that rebuke and responds, in a obedient way to be corrected when we step out of line. But I think this really points at the idea of speaking truth, appropriately, timely, and effectively. And I think kind of you could take all of this about when to speak and the words we choose to use. All of that is kind of combined in this idea of a word rightly spoken. Timing needs to be right, and if we speak it clearly and effectively, it can be responded to properly. Any other thoughts on those? Okay, then we come to 13 and 14. I don't know if y'all had the same trouble I had with these verses, but this is one I had to go to Kyle and Dalish to get an understanding, because we were kind of talking before we started that, the cold of snow in the harvest, to me, that does not jump off the page as being something positive, but that's what the Proverbs is speaking of it in a positive manner. So Kyle and Dalish talks about this as this is not necessarily a snowfall during harvest season, which would destroy crops, but this is the refreshing coolness provided by snow brought down from the mountains during the harvest season. Apparently they would amass the snow, and basically collect it on the top of the mountains and bring it down during the summer as a refreshment. And I had no idea this was a tradition or a thing that was happening. So this really helped me understand this. So basically, someone say something. No, sorry, my headphone kicked in. I thought I heard somebody say something. So when we see this, a trusty servant, accomplish his mission faithfully, brings confidence rather than anxiety, refreshes those who entrusted him with the task. But now, understanding how this being received in the heat of the harvest, that cool, refreshing water makes a lot more sense to me. I was a little bit lost on this in the beginning. I don't know if y'all were in this with me or not. But we see a contrast there with 13 and 14. So we have someone who's dependable versus unreliable, someone who fulfills expectations versus creates false expectations, right? Someone who promises to do something and never does it. And then one refreshes, the other disappoints. One brings blessing and the other brings frustration. Go ahead, Jason.
It's interesting you bring that up. I spoke to someone that's familiar with Hawaii, and specifically the island of Big Island, Hawaii. And there are two tall elevation points there, mountains, and it's always warm in Hawaii. And when there's snow on top of those mountains, they will pack up the back of a pickup with snow and then drive down that mountain. Eventually you get back to 80 degrees, 70 degree weather, but you have this plentiful amount of cool, refreshing relief. And so it still happens, that practice in warm tropical areas where there's high elevation, for that snow to accumulate at the top. But the delivery of what you need when you're in the state of wanting either a message to get delivered or for someone to get what they need spiritually. And when that happens through the word, it is that wonderful, refreshing, pure delivery that God provides.
Yeah, thank you for that. Verse 15. Anybody got any thoughts on verse 15? Because that one there for me was another one that had a whole lot more to say than my initial reading of it. Verse 15, by long forbearance, a ruler is persuaded, and a gentle tongue breaks a bone.
You think it could be related to what Jesus speaks of in Luke 18? He's talking about the persistent woman going to the king, and though he doesn't care about her, but because of her persistence, he finally gives in to her.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this idea of, that patience can often accomplish what force cannot. I mean, force is one of those things where you can bend somebody to your will, right? Thinking about rulers and in this time, you could bend somebody to your will, but you don't really change their perspective. You've just changed what they do, and you really haven't affected their inside. Whereas the gentleness over time and that perseverance can actually break down the resistance. And, I look at this through the view of evangelism, right? Where you have someone who is, steeped in their tradition and, coming at them and just saying, you're wrong, X, Y, and Z, look at this, you're not reading this right. How you approach that is not well received. And odds are you're not really going to change their mind. But over time and patience of study, they could come to that knowledge on their own and realize that they are in error and make that change, where it's their faith that is making that change versus them just kind of conceding to what you're pointing out.
To that point, you mentioned there a whole, I think, principle where you can see it played out. Maybe with is it David and Nabal, and how he responds to Nabal's response when he was seeking provisions out in the wilderness. And then you see how Abigail approached David afterward in humility.
Mm-hmm.
and just the disposition between the two made a big difference in how David responded, who wasn't king yet, but he had a lot of say in what was going to happen on that occasion.
Yeah, he had a bunch of men with him.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody got any other thoughts on this section that maybe we didn't bring out that you want to bring up before we move on? Okay, let's go to 16 through 20. Keith, will you go ahead and just read 16 through 20 for us?
24,
16 through 20.
20. Have you found honey? Eat only as much as you need, lest you be filled with it and vomit. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, lest he become weary of you and hate you. A man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a club, a sword, and a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth and a foot out of joint. Like one who takes away a garment in cold weather, and like vinegar on soda is one who sings songs to a heavy heart.
So in this one, I mean, I think it's kind of a difficult one to put all these together, but I saw kind of a blend of where this is, even good things become harmful without wisdom and restraint. You know, and I feel like maybe 20 may be the outlier, or excuse me, not 20, but 19 may be the outlier there. But, you know, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And I think, you know, in a world full of surplus and riches that we live in today, at least us here in the United States, where we have everything we could possibly need and more of it than we possibly need. How that can kind of run into an issue of the words kind of escape, an issue of just being given into too many things of the world that aren't necessarily sinful, but they eat up your time. They take away too much of your time that then you then lose it, and then you can't put that where it needs to go. Anybody have any thoughts on this section?
It seems like a common theme here is moderation. You know, we are to be temperate in all things and not given fully over to any one thing at the expense of you know, wisdom and temperance and that's what I see in the first couple verses at least.
Yeah, and I like 20, how, you know, you have a good thing of, you know, singing songs and being cheerful is a good thing, but when it comes to someone who has a heavy heart, like, that's not the time. And I think that ties in with what Paul said in Romans 12:15, and the weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. Kind of, just because, you know, you're in a place where you're just happy and everything is go lucky for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be beneficial to someone who's dealing with sorrow. You know, we need to be able to kind of meet them where they're at and help them maybe get over it. Like I said, weep with them when they're weeping and help them through that time. And it may not be the time. And if someone's super happy, you coming and crying on their shoulder, like, you may be getting something out of it, but what have you done to them? Have you pulled them down? It's just, to me, interesting how the balancing of encouraging someone while also allowing them to grieve and kind of weaving through that, I think, is what this one challenges us to do. Any other thoughts before we move to finish up the chapter?
Just, there are a few verses that you pointed out that make you scratch your head a little bit and think about it, and you're not quite sure what that is, but then the overwhelming majority of these are speaking about things in terms that people understand. Every person, from the poorest among us, they understand that. The foot out of joint, the bad tooth, all these things. This is not hard to understand if we would just apply it to our life.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring up Jesse's comment. Jesse said the only thing we can consume as much as we want and won't affect us is the Word of God. And yeah, I agree with Ian on that one. That is it. That's the one thing. Okay, let's see here. Let's finish up if we're going to do this before we run out of time. Jason and Brad, can I get y'all to finish up the chapter? Jason, can you get 21 through 24, and then Brad 25 through 28?
If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. The north wind brings forth rain, and a backbiting tongue, angry looks. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife.
As cold water to a weary soul, so is good news from a far country. A righteous man who falters before the wicked is like a murky spring in a polluted well. It is not good to eat much honey, so to seek one's own glory is not glory. Whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls.
I feel like there's a lot said in these last ones. Anybody recognize 21 and 22?
Romans chapter 12.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're this one happened to be in my sermon this weekend. I just thought that, I was like, well, that's interesting. Yeah, Paul uses this, don't try to overcome evil with evil, overcome it with good. That is the only way to truly overcome evil and to stay in the right place. The other one that I really wanted to make sure we got a chance to look at was the 26. A righteous man who falters before the wicked is like a murky spring in a polluted well. For me, this jumped out at me because people should be able to draw strength from those who are righteous. And whether or not, you're surrounded by people who are immoral or people who are righteous, if you stumble at a moment where it is observable and people can see it, those who are righteous, they gain nothing from you. And those who are, wicked, they also have nothing for you because you obviously have no true value. It seems like there's just no good that can come from faltering. There's nothing profitable on either side. It's like a murky spring or a polluted well. There's nothing good that comes from it. To me, that one had an impact on me. I thought was one to take note of. Did anybody have any others in this section, or as we finish up the time, the rest of the proverb that maybe we didn't look at in this chapter that they want to look at before we head on?
I looking at a couple of the passages. They teach me about how vigilant we need to be in our daily lives, most especially when we are dealing with our friends, our neighbors, and those who are not in the faith, because our very conduct may be the only Bible that our neighbors will read. We may be the only word that these people will see, so that they may be drawn to Jesus Christ. So we need to be always careful, just like in Peter. The scripture says that the devil is setting us near for us, and we must be on the lookout lest we be devoured.
That's a good one. Well, that is pretty much about as quickly as I knew how to get through this one in 30 minutes. I think this one could be opened up, and we could spend hours in this one, because this one just had so many different thoughts that sent me on different thoughts. Well, I guess if no one has anything else, Brad, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. It is always good to see everybody. I was thinking earlier today as we were looking at what we're going to be doing today, we're getting close to the end. So maybe be thinking about what we'd like to do next, where we might like to go next after this is over. So keep that in mind, and we'll look forward to being back together with you all next Wednesday. And remember, feel free to invite others. It's a good opportunity for folks to come and join us and just be exposed to the Lord's word and the beauty of it. Thank you all.